Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Venus and today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in February. So February was an okay month. There were 4 books that I DNF'd. I finished 6 books. I read fantasy, romance, horror, and kind of like a magical realism. And overall, I think the lowest rated book that I had, for the month of February was 2.5 stars, and I did have 2 5-star ratings. The first book that I DNF'd was called The Bright Side of Going Dark by Kelly Harms. I did talk about this book a little bit in my January book haul. So this book is about a social media influencer who has a huge following. Her name is Mia, and she has like this perfect life on her social media, but behind the scenes her fiance had just recently broken off their engagement. So she's grieving that, still trying to maintain appearances on her social media. Obviously she has a lot of sponsors, and she just decides she can't take it anymore and she steps away from her platform. I think I got like 100 pages in. I remember sitting on my couch and I looked at the book and it's like, I think it's close to 400 pages, and I was like, I don't really care about these characters. I don't want to invest any more time in reading it, so I did DNF it. I think it just spent so much time talking about Mia's like influence and things that she posted and her dog, and I just didn't care. The second book I DNF'd was Games We Play by Dana Isley. This is a novella, kind of steamy erotica genre, and the premise is about a gamer, I think his name is Joker, who pretty sure he wears a mask when he's gaming, but apparently has like this sexy voice that everyone loves, and a gaming site sends over a woman named Quinlan to interview him, and she comes in and it just gets super cringy really quick, and I was like, no. And it's only 100 pages, but I couldn't. The dialogue was so corny. I was like, no, this is not working for me. So I did DNF it. Apparently a lot of people love it, which is how I heard about it, but I did not like it. So good luck if you want to try that book, if that's your thing. Have fun. The third book I DNF'd, which was kind of sad. I really was looking forward to reading this book, very excited about it. Comes very highly recommended.
Hello, Editing Venus here. I just noticed that I called this book Ruin Me instead of Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwing, so I do want to apologize for that in advance. And they also mentioned that this book was read for my January wrap-up, when in fact obviously this is my February wrap up. So I want to apologize in advance for those things. And thank you guys for watching, and back to our regularly scheduled program.
This is a romance book and it centers around pirates. It takes place in the 1700s. The lead female character is a strong lead female character. She is a pirate, and I just didn't enjoy it. It's a thick book too. It's over 400 pages, and I got to page 100 and realized it was a love triangle trope, and I don't like those. I think the last love triangle trope that I enjoyed was Twilight with Bella, Edward, and what's Jacob. And I'm looking at this 400 plus page book and I'm like, no, I'm not going to care. I'm going to waste my time. So unfortunately I did DNF that book, and I'm sad to say that because I was really looking forward to it. I think in my brain I was expecting like Pirates of the Caribbean with some steam and some funny times and some like, you know, amazing romance, and it just wasn't working out that way for me. So unfortunately I did DNF that book. The fourth book I DNF'd was called The Sex Cult Nun by Faith Jones. It centers around Faith Jones' experience growing up in the Children of God cult. I just honestly couldn't stomach it. I don't really have any triggers. I can pretty much read anything. But there is a scene in this book when Faith was very young. I can't remember if she was like, I don't remember how old she was. She was very young though, anywhere between like maybe 7 to 12. And she walks in on her parents, you know, getting ready to have sex. And it made me super nauseous really quick. I quickly learned that I cannot deal with anything that has to do with children, sexual abuse, pedophilia. No, and it's a nonfiction book. I can't even get my words out. I could not read any more of it. So I know this is a very beloved book. A lot of people loved it, loved her journey getting out of this cult, and so I do recommend it if you're interested in that. I also quickly learned in the month of February that I don't like reading books about cults, and so I just couldn't finish it. And unfortunately, that image of this poor little girl in that situation is seared into my brain. So I just decided to save my own heart and stop reading it. So those are all the books that I DNF. Let's get into the books that I did read. 4 of them I've already reviewed on my channel. 2 of them were reading vlogs, and 2 of them were in a video where I did a rant and a rave. So we'll go over those 2 books first, which is The History of Wild Places by Shea Ernshaw. This book, I had a love-hate relationship with it. It started off so promising. It starts off with a man, I think his name was Travis, and he has the ability to touch objects, and he can see where the person that owned it or last touched this object, where they had been, where they were going, kind of a little video snapshot of things that were going on with this person. So he helps out with a lot of cold cases, missing cases, murder cases, things like that. So he's asked to follow the missing person, Maddie St. James, who is a children's author, and it goes from there. So it starts off really good. I'm thinking it's going to be about like this murder mystery detective type thing, and then we jump into pastoral, which is a cult. And I definitely learned very quickly in the month of February that I don't like reading books about cults. But the writing style, the pacing, the descriptions, the characters were very well fleshed out. I really enjoyed the writing of this book. I read it, within 24 hours. It was a quick read. I think just the biggest thing for me is the cult setting, and just things that go along with cults, the brainwashing. It was really frustrating. And then the big reveal was such a letdown for me, such a letdown. So for this book, I think I ended up giving it 3 stars. So another book I read in the month of February is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. That was my rave part of that video where I raved about this book. I am a huge Colleen Hoover fan. She just does romance so well. This book is about Kenna. She is recently released from jail, and she's on a journey to connect with her daughter, who is now 4 years old. And we find out that Kenna did this horrible, horrible accident that ended up killing someone. And we go through her journey trying to get back to her daughter, and she meets Ledger, who is just he's such a sweetheart. I think the thing about reading Colleen Hoover books is you really want to go in with very minimal information. If you want to hear more about it, again, this was part of my rant and rave video, so you can follow the link to that. I did end up giving this book 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I thought it was wonderful. I think the way Colleen Hoover handled the hard subject matter in this book, I think she did a great job at reflecting every different person's perspective and the tragedy that happened, and I definitely recommend Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. The next 2 books were such a contrast. They were Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, and Crescent City, House of Sky and Breath. First 2 books in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. I did reading vlogs on both of these, and so I won't spend too much time on them, but Crescent City is the first adult series by Sarah J. Maas. It's also the first books that I've read by her, so I've never read any of her young adult fantasy series. And the first book, House of Earth and Blood, I loved so much. 4.5 stars. It's about Bryce, who is half fairy, and Hunt, who is like a fallen angel, like slave angel, and it's their journey on trying to find out what happened to Danica, Bryce's friend. And it was fantastic. The first, I want to say, 100 to 200 pages was pretty slow. It was a lot of world building, which is fine. But then it just picked up, and the last 200 pages were phenomenal. I loved it. I cried. There were characters in it that I adored, and it was so good. It was so good. It was a great introduction for me to Sarah J. Maas's writing style. I mean, there's demons, there's angels, there's fairies, there's mer people, there's fire sprites, and all kinds of magical creatures in this world. And I loved it. And the second book, House of Sky and Breath, I get those all mixed up in my brain, came out. I decided to go ahead and jump into it while I still had the first book fresh in my mind. And it was a huge letdown for me. You will see me go back and forth between DNFing this book in my vlog. I struggled so much with it. I just felt like the relationship between Bryce and Hunt I didn't really care for anymore. There were so many different plot lines going on in the book that it just, I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I look back on it, when I first finished it, I just rated it 2.5 because just based off of enjoyment level, because I had a really hard time getting through it, and the ending was anticlimactic for me, but a lot of people are loving it, so it could just be me. I'm new to Sarah J. Maas, so I don't know, but I struggled with that book. The last two books that I read, I didn't do any videos about them, so it's my first time talking about them. First one is Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This is a horror book that was released in 2021. And I loved it. I really enjoyed it. The setting is like this secluded, snowy mountaintop with this woman named Maddie and her husband, who is the biggest douchebag I think that I've ever read in a book recently that I can remember. He is such a jerk. There is definitely trigger warnings for domestic abuse, just violence. He's a jerk. But Maddie is, and just kind of talk about a little bit what it's about. Maddie, it starts off with Maddie, she's out doing her morning chores for her husband, and she finds this mangled up fox and these huge ginormous like footprints that look like way too big to be a bear. And so she tells her husband about it, and he becomes obsessed with finding out what this creature is. Not necessarily because he wants to keep them safe, but mostly because he doesn't want any tourists or, you know, people that are interested in getting pictures of this, like, Bigfoot or Sasquatch or abominable snowman, whatever it is. He wants to take it out. He doesn't want anybody coming up on his mountaintop and messing up his little life that he's created with his wife. So he goes on this journey to try to find this monster, and I don't want to say too much because, you know, it's a horror book, so you want to kind of not give too many details, but I wouldn't say that it's scary. So my level of scary, when I know a book is scary, is when I go to sleep at night and I'm afraid to let my foot hang over the edge of the bed because I'm afraid something's going to grab me and take me into the pits of hell. So that's like my scary book gauge. Also, if I'm walking through a dark room and I know the light switch is all the way on the other side of the room, if I'm like freaking out trying to get across to turn the light on, like I'm gonna be grabbed by a serial killer or something like that. Like, these are the thoughts that go through my mind if I'm reading a really good scary book. This one was not scary, but it was very suspenseful, because they don't really tell you too much about what this like monster looks like. It's mostly that you know that it's big, and you know that it does really jacked up things to animals, and it can be quiet and get up in the trees without you even hearing it. So it's kind of like that creepy vibe. It really does center around Maddie's relationship with her husband and her discovering things about her past. And then we do get some tourists that try to come to get glimpses of this creature because there have been spottings of it, so they're trying to see it, and then you kind of go through the motions of them trying to figure out what this thing is and surviving. And it was good. The husband was such a jerk. In my brain, I was like envisioning and hoping that if you've ever seen the original like OG Jurassic Park first movie, when T-Rex like eats this man, he's like sitting on a porta potty like hiding. He left the kids, I think, in the truck, and he goes and runs into the porta potty. He's sitting in there, and the T-Rex comes and he like just swallows him, like just eats him whole. That was what I was hoping was going to happen to Maddie's husband. Whether that happened or not, I'm not going to say, but I was like hoping, like, please let this thing just take him out. But I recommend it. I think it was a great read. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's very atmospheric. I would almost wait, because now we're kind of entering into like that spring season. I would almost wait until like the fall to read it, because it's a lot of snowy scenes, like cold, and great descriptions by the author. I look forward to reading more of her books, so I do really recommend this book. The real MVP of my January reads is Jade Legacy by Fonday. It is fantastic. It is the 3rd book in a trilogy, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's amazing. It is like an Asian mafia-inspired Godfather with all the elements of Godfather. There's family, there's loyalty, there's character development, there's this Jade, this substance that gives the Greenbone Warriors some of these supernatural abilities of strength and heightened senses, and there's consequences for people that wear it that aren't trained to wear it, and of course, you know, there's people outside of the island of Kekon where this originated from, that want to get a piece of it and monopolize on it. And the two main clans that this book centers around, you get to kind of get behind the scenes and see the manipulation and the plotting and the twists and turns that takes place to get to this amazing ending. And the third book does kind of, it spans over, I think, like 20 years. I'm pretty sure it spans over 20 years. And it's so good. It's so good. There are characters in this book that I will not forget. I cannot wait to reread the series again. There's characters in this book that you think should have died a long time ago, but have like 9 lives and make it to the end of this book. And it's very surprising. And there's characters that you lose along the way, and it's heartbreaking. So I think Fonday did a fantastic job of writing this world and getting you to be so invested in the characters and immersed in it. And I am so happy that I was able to finish this, because I originally started Jade City, which is the first book, and I struggled with it. I wasn't initially going to finish that book at all. And then I used the audiobook to help me get through it, and I'm so happy that I did. So yeah, I don't want to say too much more about it because it is the third book in a trilogy, and I think you should go into it without knowing too much. But if you are into mafia, The Godfather, Asian-inspired setting, family, loyalty, manipulation, politics, all the things set in a fantasy world, in a fantasy setting, then do yourself a favor and read the series, because it's amazing. And it's definitely going to be, and unless I read a whole lot of more amazing books this year, it's definitely going to be in my top, somewhere in my top list for books that I've read in 2022. So thank you as always for hanging out with me today in my little teeny corner of booktube, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you again soon. See ya.